Oyez. I will call to order the Sierra Madre Planning Commission meeting of Thursday, August 1st. Can we have the roll call?
Yes, Chair Hutt.
Here.
Vice Chair Dennison. Commissioners Catalano,
Here.
Desai, Pevsner,
Here.
and Spears.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum. We will move to approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll move to approval of the minutes of the meeting of July 18th. Anyone have any comments?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay, I have one comment on line, going from line 115 to 116, it says, he noted that the house lends itself to a single-story design. I think that's a little bit more than I said. I think the next sentence really captures more what I was after, so I'd like to just strike that one sentence. Okay.
I'm not going to change mine.
If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously as well. Next, we'll move to community input. And we have some community today. This is great. If anybody would like to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda, please come on down. Okay. Well, if you change your mind, you'll have another opportunity after the public hearings. So next we'll go to the public hearings. The first is design review permit 1907. Do we have a staff report?
We do have a PowerPoint presentation for you this evening as well, and Joshua Wolf, our assistant planner, will be delivering that presentation for you.
Great, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's no longer back there.
I'm going to put it on here.
Oh, it's
It's on all of them. You can see whichever one you want.
You're almost pivoting.
I can't see.
I like that one's better.
From
The
back there, I
Exorcist.
couldn't see
It's
it.
You can have them spin around.
All right, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. This evening, Planning Commission will be reviewing a design review permit for a single-family residence at 610 West Highland Avenue. The property is 8,750 square feet, rectangular, 175 feet deep, 50 feet wide, located in the R1 zone. Surrounding properties are also zoned for R1. The existing structure is 2 stories and is situated between a mix of 1- and 2-story homes. The existing building footprint covers 21% of the lot. The existing house is a 1,988 square foot home with an attached 2-car garage and is built in 1968. Existing materials on the front of the structure include stucco, flagstone, and board and batten wood siding. The applicant's request is to extend the second floor bedroom and closet of an existing 2-story home by 212 square feet, remodel the master bathroom, and replace existing exterior flagstone with wood siding, existing board and batten siding with new stucco, and existing balcony walls with wood guardrail with cable railing. All new stucco is to match existing material. Pursuant to the Sierra Madre Municipal Code, a design review permit is required to allow a second-story addition on any new construction proposed to include a second story, as well as it is required to allow encroachments beyond the angle plane exceeding 10 linear feet. For the project summary, lot size is to remain the same, lot coverage remains the same, building height remains the same, gross floor area will increase by 212 square feet from 2,495 to 2,707, compared to the allowable 2,937 square feet. The setbacks won't change, and the parking will not need to change either. So from the site plan, it can be seen that in the red highlighted area, the addition comes out 212 square feet towards Highland Avenue on the north end of the property. On the left is the existing floor plan for the second story, and on the right is the proposed second story with the scope of work in the highlighted area in red. It will extend the master bedroom out towards the front of the property. It'll allow for growth of the bathroom and for an walk-in closet. The front elevation on the left shows an existing and proposed front facade. This demonstrates how the area above the garage will become more open to sunlight and views towards the mountain. This section demonstrates the space as proposed, featuring exposed beams at a peak height of 12 feet 6 inches. This is a closer look at the front elevation of the home, featuring the color of the stucco, flagstone, and board and batten siding. The dark wood you see here is the board and batten. This is a closer look at the front elevation plan for the replaced materials, featuring wood siding at the garage. It wraps around both sides of the home. Matching stucco to replace the board and batten siding, and wood-plated cable rail to replace the existing balcony walls. And here's a rendering of what the proposal will look like. And a comparison for before and after. The existing west elevation on top shows the continuation of flagstone wrapping from the front of the garage, and board and batten wood siding wrapping from the front facade and extending upwards. From the front facade where the front door is right here, wrapping up towards the second level. The proposed west elevation below shows the extension of the space projecting towards the front at 10 feet 6 inches, and shows proposed wood siding continuing from the front facade of the garage, terminating at the interior corner. Stucco replacing the board and batten siding and used for new walls. New wood plated cable rail continuing from the front and existing roof material continuing as well. The existing east elevation on top shows all stucco material, including balcony walls, continuously. Proposed east elevation below, showing extension of space towards the front of the property by 10 feet 6 inches. Matching stucco for new walls and new wood siding wrapping from the front of the garage, as well as the roof material to be matching existing. And here's a closer look at the proposed front facade and materials, as you can see from the material board. We have the wood sample for side guardrails and beams, the light stucco, and the dark wood trim. Design review permit finding summary. The proposed project is consistent with the general plan design designation of residential low density and objectives, as the project remains as a single family residential use, preserves and refurbishes the existing structure, and does not add any footprint to the lot. The proposed second story addition, which encroaches beyond the angle plane, will not unreasonably interfere with the use, possession, or enjoyment of surrounding adjacent properties, in that the projection is located within the existing setbacks and complies with all development standards in the R1 ordinance in regard to allowing floor area, lot coverage, and setbacks. The height, bulk, mass, and scale and siding of the proposed project encroaching beyond the angle plane is compatible with the existing neighborhood, landforms, and surroundings. The existing structure plus the addition of 212 square feet at the second level occupies 21% of the lot. The proposed addition encroaching beyond the angle plane reflects the scale of the neighborhood, and the proposed project does not visually overpower or dominate the neighborhood and is not ill-proportioned, and that the proposed addition maintains the existing 23 feet 2-inch height, existing setbacks, and visible scale on the existing house. The proposed second-story addition encroaching beyond the angle plane will not unreasonably interfere with the public views or the views and privacy of neighbors.
Can we switch to the next slide?
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Thank you.
It won't produce unreasonable noise levels and cause material adverse impacts, as the proposed addition does not visually obstruct public views from neighboring 2-story homes, and existing trees and foliage in the surrounding yards negate any obstruction or privacy issues. The project proposes to match the colors and materials from the existing structure and incorporate new materials to exhibit a coherent and compatible project. The proposed second-story addition encroaching beyond the angle plane maintains the existing architectural style by proposing to use materials which match existing structure, and new material appropriate to the architectural style. The proposed second-story addition does not exceed the size thresholds and does not apply to item 8. Before the commission tonight, the alternatives are to approve design review permit pursuant to Planning Commission Resolution 1909, approve design review permit with modifications, deny the design review permit, identifying the findings that the Planning Commission feels cannot be made on the basis for rejecting those findings, or continue the project and approve staff, provide staff and applicant with direction. Staff recommends to approve the application for design review permit 1907, subject to the conditions of approval.
Okay.
Questions?
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple here. The 10-foot-6 is just the enclosure. It doesn't include the gable extension out toward the street. Is that correct?
The 10-foot-6 extension is for the gable end of the front of the structure.
Of the enclosed structure, so
Yes.
that the eaves project out an additional distance toward the street.
Correct.
Okay. And do you know what that dimension is?
The eaves over the roof?
Yeah. Does it show somewhere here? Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a good idea, but I'd like to
No, exactly.
know. Does anybody know?
It shows exposed beam all the way out to the end.
I guess the applicant can answer that, so why don't we put it on hold and we'll
Okay.
get the applicant.
Then I'll put the other one on hold because it's linked to it. Thank you.
I have one question, and maybe this is better for the applicant as well. Is it, we had a lot of the sort of elevation pictures, and I was wondering if there was one that was more perspective, because you really couldn't get an idea of the extension coming out when you're just looking at it in elevation. And it would have been really great to have a sort of perspective view so we can see how that comes out, and maybe the applicant has that.
So the only perspective view we have is the 3D rendering of the front elevation.
Mm-hmm.
And it does project that front facade out a lot more where the garage is. That second face where the front doors is actually a lot farther behind than it appears. And I want to say that's at least 15 feet behind.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, with the applicant, we've got a couple questions for you we've already heard, and if you'd like to make a presentation, come down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, applicant, come on down.
But he does answer.
Well, you can address the commission and/or have your advisors.
I'm sorry.
I'm Jennifer Quintana, the applicant. This is Long Tang, my structural engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, I dabble in architecture because it seems like it's easy. But apparently, if we're here tonight, it's not that easy. First off, to answer your question regarding the projection, the projection is basically the same as what is there right now. So roughly, it's about 4.5 feet of sort. So if you have the plans in front of you, I don't know whether you're able to.
They're like this.
So we did submit one full-size set and some other sets that just shows all the elevations. If staff don't mind, we can point out how they project now and how they project in terms of if you look at the west elevations, is there a way to see that or on screen?
We can go back.
Yeah, all these things look like crazy.
Okay, so that's right now, you see the west elevation, if you look at the projection, it's the same, in some of going toward the street on the top, it's basically around 4.5, 5 feet of, right now, with these cantilevered 6x12, 6x14 that are sticking out. So we basically trying to give them, a little bit of cover, matching the same extension that's now. It's still set back from the actual front of the garage about a foot, foot and a half. The plans I have here from scaling wise, that's what it looks like.
Okay. You had a follow-on question, Joe?
Well, what I was interested in, and this may be directed more at its staff, was whether, when we consider what's protruding through the angle plane, is it only the structure itself, or does it include the roof overhang toward the street, so that we have 15 feet through the angle plane?
So eaves are allowed to project within the angle plane up to 18 inches.
Okay, so we're over that.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can we go, I'm sorry, I was gonna ask a question about that 13. Was any thought given to extending the sort of middle portion of the roof? If you look at the top on this elevation, each section of the roof is notched back about an equal amount. And then on the bottom, you've got the top now, because it's extended, extends a lot more than the middle section. And I was wondering if there was thought given to extending the middle section out so you would have an even step back.
Well, that would extend the front porch, because that middle section is actually a porch of sort.
Right.
It's a cover. In terms of, we never talked about that because it was never brought up in terms of making that whole porch part of the construction, because her thought was, I just want some more room for my bedroom, my
Right.
closet, that was it.
Right, I understand, but I think that, when you look at it from the elevation view, you can't really get a grasp on it. But I think from a perspective view, when you see those step backs, I think that it would really blend in better and look better if they were even, as opposed to the sort of long one on top and then a short one. And you probably would come to enjoy the covered porch quite a bit as well, element. So that's a thought.
Well, we really took off on that, but they're presenting.
Yeah.
Do they have more to say?
Yeah, any other questions or more? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, like, again, I mean, we didn't anticipate that we had to come this far, because it's literally a tight bedroom with a very small closet that it doesn't work for her. And that's the only thought, was to extend it so we can get more room, that's all.
okay, thank you.
I'll be here to answer questions.
One additional question that I have, did I see in the renderings that were presented that there was some ochre-colored material?
Yes.
And I don't see that on the material board. Is the material board different than the renderings?
There could be color shift in terms of the visual renderings, so I would go by the material color board.
Yeah,
So-
the computerized rendering is a little bit off, because real paint and computer coloring can never be actually matched up.
So in looking at the difference between ochre and white, you're saying that it's white?
Well, the color board would say what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
The end product would be the color board, not the dimension.
Right. Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak on this project? Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission discussion. Who would like to lead us off?
Go ahead, Joe, you got the most to say. Or the most concern.
I was just doing some noodling here, and I think that what it nets out at, if we discount the 18 inches that Director Gonzalez mentioned, that we really have about 3.5 feet running north-south, 3.5 feet of projection through the plane that is not as of right. So it's and I think that that's fair, because when you have an overhang like that, it really what's going to affect things visually and could potentially affect the neighbor is going to be the whole roof overhang coming through. So I think that we ought to discuss that in terms of whether that's going to be acceptable. If the neighbor to the east is in the audience and wants to speak on that, I think that might be important.
Well, I don't think they are, because nobody came up.
So,
May I say something? May I?
Sure.
So the neighbor
Oh,
on-
wait, please wait till you get to the, because we
Then-
need to record it.
The neighbor on the other side it's an apartment complex, and their windows, they do have windows that overlook my balcony.
Uh-huh.
So the only thing that would affect, and there is foliage there, they're not going to be, I really don't believe that they're going to be worried about any blockage of anything, especially because they're renting and they've only been there for a couple of months now.
Okay.
So I don't know how long they'll be there, but.
In terms of the projection, that neighbor to the east is actually more forward toward the street.
Yes.
Right, I saw
She's
that.
in the middle, and the neighbor to the west of her is actually
back.
further back.
Okay, thank you very much.
I like your suggestion about evening out the roof. I think aesthetically would be better. I think if that's a minor thing that they could approve, I think this is a good idea. If they want some room, it's a simple fix, and I'm okay with it.
So, we have a homeowner that wants to make their bedroom 212 square feet larger. They're here today because if they extend it in an existing manner that's going to intersect the angle plane. The house predates our angle plane rule. They should get a pass. We shouldn't even be bothering them, because the house was constructed, and we certainly don't want them to suddenly put 6 feet of another kind of roof line on the front of that. It would damage the house, and it would not look as good. There are no windows over on that side in that addition, so there's no problem with them looking into a neighbor's room. It's going to update the house's appearance. They're looking like they're making the siding going from vertical to horizontal. To me, it's a push. The point about changing the cut lines of that's really only, based on the way that house is tucked down and it's set back, that the only person that would notice that change would be the property owner on the right-hand side, on the west side. And is it worth it to ask them to go through all those changes of extending beams and whatever for an aesthetic reason? Their front door is already shaded. It's a little actually dark underneath in there. Whether it needs to be more dark, I don't know. I think if they wanted to do it, they would have asked for it. It certainly is an opportunity. I guess they could go back and do it without our permission. But this is a homeowner that wants to upgrade the appearance of the house and bring it into modern standards, and I don't think we should stand in the way. My only interest is that you know, because the level of that deck is pretty much at the height of the sidewalk, they're gonna end up with people looking into their bedroom, so I hope they have some plan on, you know, how that's gonna work.
Curtains.
So well, yeah, or something, yeah. So I see no reason why we should stand in their way.
I'd like to concur because I don't think that we should be involved. We should be involved in redesigning anything that isn't, you know, directly pertinent to the issue on the table. So I just like, you know, and I'm saying that as an architect too, that I don't want to get involved in redesigning people's stuff unnecessarily. So
Well, I'm not sure
just
this
let
one needs it.
I may, yeah,
I-
I just let that notch issue go.
Well, I think this is a great project. I really like it a lot. And I think as was already said up here that, you know, improving and modernizing our existing housing stock is a much better thing to do than demolishing and building something we don't want. So I'm very much in favor of this project. I think we can make all the findings easily. I think application of the angle plane in this instance would be a mistake. It would make a worse project.
How much into the angle plane does this roof actually project? Is it that much? Is it?
Well, it's not much to begin with, but it's an extension of the existing roof line. And as we've talked about,
Yeah.
if you change the roof line to meet the angle plane, you'd come up with a weird beast.
A goofy
that would
looking
be
thing.
it would be inferior to the project at hand. So, with regard to the extension of the roof line, I think that's not necessary for approval of the project. It's more in the keeping of. Here's a suggestion. If it were my house, I would do that. And I think that we should direct staff that if the applicant looks at that and decides they want to, that's in substantial compliance with the approval tonight, and they don't have to bring it back to us. But if they look at it and decide they don't want to, it's their house. I think it's fine. So I'm very much in favor of the project as well. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I so move. We approve.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we will move to discretionary demolition permit 1901 and design review permit 1902. We have a staff presentation?
We have a staff presentation and also a PowerPoint presentation that we will be viewing. So the applicant is requesting a discretionary demolition permit because the property is over 75 years of age, and a design review permit because the property exceeds the overall square footage of 3,500, gross square footage of 3,500 square feet. An historic resource evaluation report was prepared for this project, and it was found to be eligible for historic designation under criterion B, architectural. This is a site and vicinity map of the property. The site is rectangular in shape. It's 28,085 square feet. It's surrounded to the north and south by single-family residential uses. And also there are some multifamily uses that front East Grandview to the south and also along East Allegria Avenue. To the west is institutional uses, being St. Rita's School and the Catholic Church. This is a single-family residential R1 zoning district, and it is deemed to be low-density residential per the general plan. The proposed project includes an existing 2,586 square foot residence. As taped by the architect, the assessor has a slight discrepancy at 2,536 square feet. They're also proposing to legalize existing non-permitted floor area totaling 1,084 square feet, and that's largely within a basement level below the single-level house, as viewed from the street. The total of the non-permitted floor area and the new 885 square feet of addition will total 1,969 square feet. There's also an existing two-car garage on the property at 521 square feet. And that's located at the very rear corner of the property. I provided a key to highlight the areas of addition and reconfiguration. So in the area delineated as green, that is a reconfigured master bedroom. They're adding 210 square feet of additional space to that area. And that's actually an addition, and it actually bumps out from the plane of the existing structure, and we'll see that in more detail. They're also reconfiguring a lower level bedroom, in that same key area of green, and that's adding 143 square feet. They're also reconfiguring the kitchen and dining room, adding 103 square feet in burnt orange. And also in blue, a new lower level floor bedroom addition of 326 square feet. And also a new 311 square foot one-car garage, and that garage does contain a full bathroom. Photographs of the property is viewed from the north. This is the north-facing elevation. This property was constructed in 1916. And actually, let me go back here, because there is also a ladder addition on the concrete terraced area. It was constructed in 1928, and at that time there were a pair of atrium doors that were installed in that location. View of the south elevation. On the south elevation in the basement level, which they're seeking to legalize, there are bedrooms and bathroom, 3 bedrooms and a bathroom. Partial side elevation, and the location with the band of windows is a enclosed sunroom. The addition will actually come from that plane off of the sunroom addition and move forward to align with the other plane of the house. So it's still stepped back from the other single-story element of the house from here. And also, just as a note, to give you a point of reference, this sunroom is going to be converted into a stairwell. Those windows will remain in place and intact. There'll be that 326 square foot bedroom addition below, and there'll be a deck above, an open deck. This is a partial side elevation along the west. The existing 2-car garage looking south, and also view from the house looking south, so you can actually see the fall of the overall terrain from street front to the rear of the property. Also not depicted is a swimming pool to the right. We'll see that in the landscape plan. That's existing and will remain in place. Your packet has other exhibits of that as well. A neighborhood analysis was prepared for the property, and it was determined that the mean household size of the neighborhood of these notice properties, excluding the institutional and multifamily uses, is 2,249 square feet. The median household or housing size in the area is 2,217 square feet. The top 1/3 is at 3,450 square feet of the neighborhood. Being site-specific to this property, the existing house is 2,506 square feet. With the legalization of the existing non-permitted floor area and the 855 square feet of additions, the total proposed floor area is 4,555 square feet. It exceeds the top 1/3 by 1,099 square feet. Also, these numbers exclude garages. The assessor's office does not capture that, so we do not use that as our analysis. Project information. The project is compliant and meets all code requirements regarding lot size, lot coverage, building height. Gross floor area, I did make one change to some of the calculations as shown in red and underlined strikeout on your exhibits and on screen. The actual non-permitted floor area per the architect's information is 1,084 square feet, not 1,136 as I originally have. That's included in the staff report. The other change was to the floor area to 5,387 square feet in lieu of 5,514. There was also, to be code compliant, because this house does have 5 bedrooms, existing 2-car garage, it does require 3 covered parking spaces. So an additional 1-car garage was included, adding 311 square feet. And that does include a full bathroom in that garage space. This is the existing floor plan and demolition plan, first floor. Street entrance is from here. This is a concrete vestibule, exposed open patio here in concrete. There's some concrete urns placed in this area. This is the area of the enclosed outdoor sunroom, which will become, you'll see in the next slide, will become the stairwell. This is showing the additions on the first floor, 200 square feet highlighted in green, 103 square feet on in a new reconfigured kitchen, and the green is the bedroom. This is the existing basement and demolition plan. You can see the 3 bedrooms and bathroom. And the reconfiguration and addition of square footage. 143 square feet highlighted in green is what's occurring within the basement area. That's actually a bump out from the existing wall plane. 103 square feet, another bump out and reconfiguration to create a family room. And a new 326 square foot bedroom. And you can see the stairwell behind that. And that same space has a deck above it, a new deck. Existing roof plan and proposed roof plan. Here you can see where the bump out actually occurs in this area from existing and proposed. That area too.
Vince, are those proposed areas?
Yes,
flat?
they are.
They're
Yes.
flat, okay, roof, okay.
So give you orientation, this is the sunroom, this is the deck above the bedroom, this is the kitchen bump out, and this bump out here is from for the master bedroom, and which also leads out to a deck right here. This is the 311 square foot single detached garage. Shows both the roof plan of the existing 2-car garage, and highlighted in blue is the single car garage, and you can see there's a small full bathroom attached to that. Comparison elevations, so we have the existing north elevation on the top and the proposed north elevation below that. And that's where you can see the reestablishment of the window bay here in lieu of the French doors or atrium doors onto that existing concrete terrace. See some modification and elimination of the chimney and fireplace and extension of the roof line within the same height and plane is represented here. This is the rear or south elevation. Again, existing is depicted on top, and the proposed elevation below. The proposed elevation, now you can see the introduction of the 2 balconies. Modifications to the roof plane, reconfiguration of windows. You'll also notice that there is a muntin on these new windows, which are wood windows, and they reflect the style of the existing windows, but not to the same level of detail that appears at the sunroom and also in the front of the house. So they're showing differentiation between the window style. This is the existing west elevation on top and the proposed, or existing west elevation existing on top and proposed elevation below, showing the new deck.
So it's going to be down to one window on that?
That is what is proposed, yes, on the west elevation. This is the existing east elevation on the top image and proposed below that. You can see the introduction of the new deck and access stairs from the yard and driveway. .3D renderings. Looking at the front and rear facades. The introduction of 2 decks. Also the differentiation in terms of color, lighter color band on the top of the building and a darker color below. Aerial views of the entire grounds. This is the landscape plan. It does include 2 oak trees. One of them adjacent to the driveway, which will be retained in place, and another one towards the lower right corner of the property, towards the property line. Permeable pavers will be included in the driveway and parking areas. Decomposed granite will be included in more of a formal garden that leads to an herb garden or raised planting beds in this location. Existing pool remains, and this is a mulched area. Areas identified as turf are actually festuca, glauca, and the entire plant palette is drought tolerant. And it begins from the street front with very low horizontal plant material to reference the horizontality of the structure. These are the paint materials and the exterior lighting. The roofing material is multicolored concrete roofing tiles with 4 variations of color. The windows are wood windows in a variety of operation, including casement and double hung, some awnings. I didn't include every catalog cut sheet in this example, but it's included in your packet. The discretionary demolition permit finding summary. This is because the project was over 75 years of age, being constructed in 1916. The Historic Resources Evaluation Report identified it as an intact example of prairie-style architecture, which is a fairly rare example here in Sierra Madre and in some cases in the San Gabriel Valley. And being that the house is eligible for local designation under criterion B, architectural, the street-facing elevation will be retained. The additions recur at the rear of the existing structure and with an existing basement area. And the applicants, again, wish to legalize the existing habitable floor area that's currently there. The design review permit finding summary. The property will continue to be used as a single-family residence and will still retain its one-story appearance from the street. The additions are consistent with the original architectural design style. The additions are also located at the back of the residence and within a lower-level basement area. And those additions comply with setback, height, and roofline requirements. And the house also continues to retain its split-level design and remain integrated into the sloping property. The landscape improvements also incorporate 2 protected coast live oaks in the rear yard. And the front elevation of the house will be restored to its historic context. And the materials will also unify the exterior appearance of the house, preserving the unique prairie-style architecture. The Historic Resource Evaluation Report identified a number of character-defining features, including the hip roof with closed eaves and deep overhang, the one-story street facade, the original fenestration, and concrete terrace porch, which was actually a later addition in 1928. Also of note were the 5 decorative concrete urns. The stucco currently is covered with lace-style color, lace-textured stucco that will be removed and replaced with a sand-finished stucco, more in keeping with the historic context of that property. Another feature I just wanted to point out is that much of the interior, in terms of the public spaces of the interior, entry hall, living room, dining room, have Philippine mahogany woodwork. That will be removed. I've also included the Secretary of the Interior Standards rehabilitation compliance findings. So we're going to be repeating some of the items that I mentioned before. I'll go through these fairly quickly. The character-defining features will be maintained and restored. The house will retain its original one-story appearance. The window design with new introduction of new wood windows will be differentiated from that of the existing on the house. The landscaping will be low height in the front elevations of the landscape, and that would complement the horizontal design of the prairie architectural style of the house. Original wood windows, front entry door, and side lights will be preserved and restored. The concrete terrace porch, sidewalls, and steps have historic significance and will be preserved and restored. And along with the urn-shaped concrete planters, they'll be cleaned and repaired. Also, the additions will match the existing 2-story building height. The balconies do not detract from the simple design of the 2-story rear elevation of the house. The alternatives before the Planning Commission this evening is to approve the discretionary demolition permit, or you can approve the discretionary demolition permit with modifications, deny the application, cited the reasons for and findings for denial, or continue the subject project and provide direction to staff and the applicant. Staff is recommending approval of this project with attached conditions included in your packet. And that concludes my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff?
Nothing right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, would the applicant or the applicant's architect like to come down and address the commission? You can, both, it just, you don't have to do either or.
This is Paul Yen. He's the owner of the property, and we have worked very closely for quite a few months on this project to balance the historic character of the existing home and property, to address the needs of the feng shui master,
Yes.
and to balance the family's needs for their home. They're very much excited to live on this property. And I think we've created a project that they will be happy with.
Yes. Yeah. We have a big family. We have a 5 children and 4 adopted children. So we need a 5-bedroom house.
Okay, questions? Go ahead.
Do you plan on replacing the front fence?
The fence is left there.
The black fence on the front?
Right. The plan was to leave it there during construction as kind of a construction fence, and then it would be removed. It's not shown in the landscape plan.
Okay. Behind the existing garage, the neighbor to your southeast, I guess it is, that's a huge drop into their property. I looked at it at least 7-8 feet. Throughout most of the backyard, there is a wall that separates the property from the people behind. Do you have any objection to putting a small wall to that corner? Because any runoff or any kind of movement from that property your property is going to fall into that neighbor's property.
No objection.
Okay. Do you have any objections to undergrounding utilities? Because currently the house is being fed by a utility pole which is on your neighbor's property in the middle of the property. You're going to replace the driveway,
Yes.
so you're going to be digging up there, and also do you have to run a new sewer access for the restrooms in the garage? You're going to have to connect that somehow to the sewer, and I imagine it's going to have to be a deep trench because you've got to go all the way up
Yeah.
to Allegria. And since you're already going to dig this nice trench, I would like to see you connect to the utility pole at the curb on Allegria as opposed to the one on your neighbor's property. And in the end, it'll save you a lot of money because someday when they underground all the utilities, you won't have to dig it up again.
Yes.
Okay. And also on the landscape plan, it calls for mulch next to the pool.
We have the landscape architect here.
Maybe my mulch is different than yours. I don't want to put it next to my pool.
I'm Sylvia Lyons, the landscape architect. We didn't have any specific use for that space yet, and so we wanted to leave it somewhat flexible for future decision as to what kind of landscaping could go in there. We wanted to keep the size of lawn areas consistent with the requirements for water conservation, and so we didn't want to put lawn out there, so we just put.
That's fine with me. I just figured it might want to be DG or pebbles or something, but mulch, I don't know. Okay, all right, so that's just the mulch is just a placeholder.
It's a placeholder.
Okay, all right. Good.
Okay, I have some questions about the new garage. Did you want another garage, or are you just doing that to comply with our code?
Comply with the code.
Because it seems to me that, you're not adding very much square foot. Really, what you're doing is legalizing what's already there.
Yes.
And this house has existed with a 2-car garage just fine for many, many years. And that building, to me, would be way better as a pool house, clubhouse, guest house, second unit to help us with our arena numbers, anything but a garage. And I see that you already put in a bathroom, which makes a lot of sense if people are out in the back. And in between those two buildings, you have pretty much another parking space anyhow. So I don't know what the plan was with this space in between the two garages. I see it's DG instead of extending the pavers, but I mean, you could extend the permeable pavers there and have an effective parking space. So to me, I think if the applicant is interested, it would make sense to, I think we have the power under the non-conforming ordinance to approve this with existing parking and allow them to convert that, what's now contemplated as a second garage into a pool house or something of that nature, as long as it doesn't change dramatically, because you can't really see it much from the street. You can barely see it if you look down the driveway. But otherwise, I don't really have any questions right now. So thank you.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
You're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
You answered my question about the garage.
Two comments here. One is that while it was noted that the square footage of the structure itself exceeds the top 1/3 in the neighborhood by almost 1,100 feet, you also see from the neighborhood plan that it is by far one of the largest properties in that whole neighborhood, and when you and there is absolutely nothing about it when you go around that neighborhood that looks outscale. So I think that there's absolutely no problem with the fact that this is going to be the largest house by square footage in the area. It's, you know, somebody's got, it's a fine scale breaker that way. That's all right. I have one other comment, and that is that there is one of the findings under the Secretary of the Interior standards that I absolutely cannot make here, and that is that the blank wall on the west facade is very, very definitely not consistent with the style. And I don't understand why there are no windows there at all. Certainly when you drive along Allegria, you'll answer that, okay? When you drive along Allegria, the west elevation of that house is very, very visible from the public right-of-way, and I really do not see the blank facade as being appropriate, and definitely I don't see it as being consistent for the sake of the findings. So, Karen, please.
We had a long discussion, Paul and I, about the west wall. The reason why there are no windows in the master bedroom on that west wall is for feng shui. And they want to have their bed on that wall because it faces the right direction. We did discuss that the rest of that wall consists of the master closet and the master bathroom, and they are very much willing to add windows in those spaces if that is a condition that is placed.
It would be a condition for me. You won't
Yeah.
have my positive vote unless there's a change there.
And my thought would be that that would be closer to the street anyway, so it would be visible, more visible from the street than the master, which is farther down to the south.
Okay. May I say that I appreciate feng shui, and
Yes.
that I've seen plenty of instances where the concepts have worked for me. So I don't have any kind of a problem other than the fact that if you're able to rework something or be able to provide windows that balance everything out graphically along the west facade without interfering with the bedroom proper, I think that would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay, so in other words, as long as the bedroom proper does not have that window there, it's okay to have them in the adjacent rooms?
Yes.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, I would really like to see you do that.
Okay. Great. Any other questions? Okay. Great. We will open the public hearing for anybody else who would like to speak on this. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Hello, I'm Craig Cardella. I live at 96 East Allegria, so I'm the guy directly to the east.
With the chickens?
Yes. They're not laying. I'll give you some eggs.
So far, no?
So one thing that came up, which I get, the underground utilities, that's my pole too. So how does that affect me? Because I don't know if I'm in a position to be able to deal
You're
with
not-
underground power.
My request was that they, rather than connect to the pole on your property, they connect to the pole that's out at the curb.
So
Your-
the pole stays.
Your pole stays,
Oh, okay.
because you're still connected to it.
Gotcha.
But someday,
Okay.
they're gonna take away that pole, and you're gonna have to go out to the same location that they're going to.
Out on the curb.
Out to the curb.
In front of his house.
Right.
Got it.
But what they have is a historical structure,
Right.
and it was built in 1916 before they had triplex and all the other cables coming in and out of it. And it will be more aesthetically pleasing to have the house without all the stuff overhead.
I completely agree. It's just, I didn't know if that pole was gonna go away, but I understand
Yeah.
your suggestion to connect to the street instead.
Right, only for that house only.
Okay, understood that. Another question I have is there a difference between a basement or a sloping property? Because what I consider a basement is to be underground. And a sloping property is like every house in Big Bear, where you come in single level, you look out the back, there's 3 more levels. So I'm not sure if I agree with that term. I don't know if I consider it a basement because 90% of the lower level is completely exposed. So I don't know is that the right term?
Well, is it, if we call it first story and second story, does it change your opinion of the house?
Well, I mean,
Yeah, how
No,
does
I
it,
mean,
how does it affect the issue here?
well, because I think basements are considered, extra space, and it's not, and so if we're adding on, it's not you're adding on basement, you're adding on visible, non-underground
Right.
space. So I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, if it were
how that
fully
works.
subterranean, we wouldn't count it in the square footage, but because this is not fully subterranean, we are counting it in the square footage. So whether we call it a basement or the first floor and the second floor, it's still being counted, right?
Right, it's
And-
being
and-
counted and
Lower
it's,
level.
would be considered a partial basement, but in essence, it's still a 2-bedroom or 2-story house.
And I think there are provisions in the code that if it's a partial basement, we could exclude it, but that's not a request on this application. So it's all being counted as part of the square footage. So we can call it first and second story, and
No, I
it
just-
functions the same way.
Trying to clarify, because
Yeah.
basement to me means you go down and it's, furnace and things like that, but.
Well, there's things called cellars, which don't have windows. There's basements that do have windows, and then there's first story, which has windows all around. So this house, it's not a cellar, and it's less of a basement because there's access and there's windows all around. And so to us, it looks like a first story. And when you stand behind there, when you stand at the back of the property, it looks like a 2-story house.
Okay. And then I guess the other question is, and just thinking big picture, is if there's 1,000 square feet getting added on, potentially.
No,
And,
well, 950.
okay, 950. But then the suggestion of let's turn the garage into a guest house of 312 square feet. So now we're at 12 and change. What I remember is there was a rule of no house could be larger than 4,000 square feet in Sierra Madre, and I think that included porches and balconies. And so, all of a sudden, this is far beyond that, and does that cause issues later? Because I know we have a lot of issues in Stonegate.
Right.
We got a lot of problems in Arcadia, and that's my question. And then,
Well, yeah, if you like, I can address that question. The square footage for garages counts. So whether it's a garage or a guest house or whatever, even if it's just a storage building, it counts in the square footage. So we're counting that already. The rule that you were talking about, the 4,000, is a rule that requires review by this body. That's why they're here. So they can actually go over 4,000. Actually, we've lowered that limit down to 3,500. And so they're here because of that. But the total is, I forget the exact amount, but it's in the staff report that they can go up to, and they are well underneath the maximum that's allowed on this property.
okay, so just so I'm clear, the garage we said was like 512. The potential second unit is, say, 300, so 825. I went on the listing appointment. I didn't get it, but we had it professionally measured. The entire house, whether you call it lower level, basement, whatever you want to call it, is 5,189 square feet. So if we take that and we add 800 with the garages or the pool house, whatever you want to call it, we're at 6,000. And then we add 950 square feet more, we're at 7,000. So my question is that where we're going?
Well, I don't know how you're
that's-
getting those
that's,
numbers,
no.
but
Well, those are the numbers. I mean,
well,
I have a
Okay, but,
I have a professional third party.
well, you can provide us that, that would be good.
I'm just-
But
I mean, I
the issue is you've got three different kind of numbers that we're dealing with. One is the existing house that's been permitted. Another portion is the existing house that's unpermitted that they're seeking to legalize. And to the extent you tape the house, you're already going to capture that. It's already there. It's legally an addition,
It's existing, right.
but it's not physically going to add anything on. And then there's the question of the actual additions. And the actual additions that they're talking about is the new garage, which is a smaller second garage, not the existing garage, and then two areas where there's bump outs that are going to come. So I think when you recounted it, I think maybe you might have double counted some of the legalized as addition to what's already there. But I know that staff has double checked the numbers and made sure. And so what we're looking at on square footage is what's in the staff report.
Do you have any specific objection?
No, I like Paul. I'm just wondering, what does this do for Sierra Madre in general? He's been very open. He's come over. He's shown me plans. But I'm just thinking in general, because I know what you're saying, but I know the house is 5189. I know it is. And if you add the garage, you add the additions, you add a pool house, you're at 7,000. I know that. And if you guys, want a copy of this, and then you want to add in the garage, the addition, and the pool house, it's 7,000. So I'm just saying, what does that do to Sierra Madre in general? Because the big stink 10 years ago when we had, consultants and specific plans for downtown, like everybody's like, we don't want 7,000 square foot mansions. And so Paul does have the biggest property on the whole street by 50%. It's 29,500 square feet. So can it handle a single story level from the street and the footprint? Yes, it can. But I'm just asking, what does that do? Because then the next guy is going to say, well, what about me? I want to do that.
Well, the next guy won't be in this same position because one of the things he's doing is he's adding his square footage with existing rooms. So it's not like he's coming to you and saying, neighbor, I'm going to add on 1,000 square feet to this house. In addition, I'm going to add on another 958 square feet. What you're seeing is that he's legalizing something which is already existing. So this is a unique event for us.
I agree.
He is not adding to the bulk and massing of this house with 2,000 square feet, because 1,000 is already there that you've been looking at since you moved in.
I agree.
He's bumping out in 3 locations, and that is the net improvement or change in the physical property. We rarely see people coming to us that say, hey, I've got a non-permitted room underneath my house that I want to legalize, and therefore, will you give me permission to do that? And so the house doesn't change, but the square footage gets larger, because now we're adding in more habitable space.
Correct.
And your math may be, that's one area where your math may be a little off, because his first floor and second floor, or second floor and first floor, however you want to look at it, are not totally the same.
Well, I think that one thing to keep in mind, staff report shows us that the code allows 5,550 square feet on this property. And that varies based on the size of the property, right?
Okay.
So if what you're saying is correct, that there's 7,000 square feet, then we have a problem. So I think it would be good to have staff double check that, but the information that we're being provided is that it's under that limit. And so as far as moving forward and what that impact is on other people, I think if they're complying with the code, we're good. If they're trying to sneak in 7,000 square feet, well, then I think we have a problem. And so, we can,
So
I
can-
think it's worthwhile for us to double check that and just confirm, because
Can
it doesn't hurt.
Can the
If I
architect
could-
speak? speak to that?
She can, Karen can speak to that, and we spent a lot of time making sure
Why
and
don't you
double
wait till,
checking the square
till,
footage of the
we're done
addition.
with, and you can rebut. Okay, thank you. Okay.
And I know it's significant and it's architectural, but does anybody know who designed it?
No,
Yes.
we have a report from a firm that does that kind of research, and we don't know the architect.
Okay, well, it's a somebody, and,
Do you
he did a
know?
li- He did a little building called the Chateau Marmont in West Hollywood, and about 10 other significant buildings in LA, so, I mean, that didn't come up, I think that's important,
Yeah.
so.
So, yeah, if you have other
I'm not
information to
trying
add,
object
that's great.
Because I think he's not changing the front, he's adding to the back.
Mhm.
But I'm just talking about Sierra Madre in general because I personally, you know, I'm in commercial real estate. I know what's going on in Arcadia. I don't want Sierra Madre to become like that. And he's got a very large property, and so he's not overbuilding it. It's not going to be like Temple City where your neighbors are 10 feet apart and they got 5,000 square foot houses. I'm not saying that. The next guy might say, well, he could do it. And the trick in Arcadia, you guys all know this, is you can build 8,900 square feet in the Oaks, and they're doing 5,000 square foot basements to sneak it. And they're doing game rooms and wine cellars and all these things down there because they want the square footage so they can get more money. And so that's why I was asking, what's the difference between basement and sloping? And it's not against my neighbor and saying, no, I don't want it. I'm just talking big picture because Arcadia is out of control. And now that the developers are slowing down because the money out of China is slowing down, if you put your house on the market in Arcadia, it doesn't sell. It's too far gone, and the buyers in Arcadia only want new, and the people that would love to live in Arcadia don't want to live next to mansions. And so I'm just thinking like 20 years away. I'm not going anywhere, but I watched this since a kid living in Temple City since the early 70s. I watched this happen to Arcadia. So I'm just thinking, but it has nothing to do saying, I don't want Paul to have a nicer house. That's not what this is about. It's just kind of big picture, and does this open up things for us in the future?
Okay.
Could I jump in with a couple of things here?
Sure.
One is that, you know, the mansionization issue that is kind of diminishing right now has to do with the sense of like buildings overcrowding. Their neighbors are overcrowding each other. This is pretty amazing because for the square footage of this house, I hardly noticed it before I went by there today. It's just, you know, if we had to find ways to architecturally cool out very, very large houses, I think that this is an excellent example.
No, I agree. You don't really get a feel for the house because you only see the front. I get that. I agree.
Okay. Well, what I want to find out from you is this: the one area where it does significantly bump out is the back on the east side, and that's adjacent to your property.
Correct.
And so, are you okay with the way the house is going to look as it's facing your property?
My wife and I talk about that a lot, and, you know, big picture, long term, is that really going to affect, you know, our life that much? No. But I'm just asking
Okay.
questions about Sierra Madre in general and just wanting to understand, you know, what could potentially, because you guys, I mean, there's been things going on in Stonegate, and the guy sued the city because they've been telling him no for 8 years, and you know, I've watched this happen in Arcadia.
We know.
I know all the developers. I talked to them all. I know what's going on, and I just am just concerned that Sierra Madre might go that way. So, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to hear from the architect, or do we
Well,
want?
no, because we still have other people who are going to come. Yeah, come on down. Well, the applicant can rebut after. 'Cause we might have other questions generated.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, thank you. My name's Erica Catanisi, and I've been a resident of Sierra Madre for 16 years, first on Grove Street, now on East Alegria. And I live at 68 East Alegria, next door on the west side to this structure. And so I just have a couple of concerns regarding one of the things Mr. Catalano brought up, the windows on the west side. The house is proposed to be pushed out closer to our home. And we already have a very narrow, it's not even a full driveway to be able to get down into our backyard, and our deck is right there. And so my concern is that if windows are necessary for that push out, that's going to encroach on our lives significantly. And I really appreciate the fact that they didn't put windows on that side of the wall, because even with the way the house is right now, our prior neighbors, we could hear them in their bedroom, and they could hear us on our deck, and they would complain for us just having dinner on our deck. So it's a big concern if windows are forced on the west side. The other concern was that I think it's great to have a deck on that side as well, but I'm concerned that there aren't any trees. In the landscape proposal, it was said that it would be all low height landscaping, and I love that it's drought tolerant. That's really conducive to the time we live in, but I do believe that trees are necessary. The property was clear cut recently, and it significantly has impacted the heat coming into our home on that side of the property. And so we've been, putting shade cloths out there to try to reduce that impact. So I would propose that trees were integrated, native California trees were integrated into the property line. Let's see. Yeah, so those were my two concerns, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have some follow-up questions. You said it was clear cut recently. Did there used to be trees in between that section of their house and your house?
The entire property was vegetated. That's why the house was never really noticed before.
Okay.
Because you couldn't see the house from the street.
And do you know what kind of trees there were before?
There was a mature deodar pine, the same size as the ones that are at St. Rita's.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were multiple different, it was very diverse.
Okay. But particularly, is it...
Avocado tree also.
An avocado tree, okay. And with regard to the windows, there was some discussion of adding windows to closets and bathrooms, but not bedrooms. So I think that would wouldn't concern your noise concerns.
Okay, if it was limited to that, I would be pleased.
Okay.
But considering our deck is right there, where we spend most of our time outside, I would be concerned if there were windows.
Okay, and there was shown on the plan, there's one large tree that I think is on your side of the property, near their pool. And I must admit, when I went on the property, I didn't go over to that.
Large trees. No, there's a small oak at the back property line. And then there's a rather short pepper tree at the rear of the property line again. But that doesn't really affect anybody's lifestyle because it's at the rear of the properties.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I was interested, based on this discussion, and Vincent will probably have to answer this, it looks like there is a considerable side yard setback to the west. Do you know what it is?
It's 29 feet 7 inches.
Almost 30 feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's almost 30 feet, and what would be the minimum required there, do you know?
That would be 10 feet on the smallest side, if we were looking at cumulative side yard setback.
So it's basically 30 versus 10.
Yeah, so they're really not even coming close to what they would be allowed in terms of coming close to your property. So I have to support the idea that since they do not want windows on that side of the bedroom anyway, that may alleviate a big part of the problem for you.
And also the landscape plan does show a tree adjacent to that deck.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I would really appreciate trees also placed along that line of the wall, because now we're fully exposed, and now you can see our house from down the street, and we're in the sun, and
You've hung those green tarps up there, right?
yeah, right, we hung those. Right, just trying to alleviate some of the pain of the sun.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a kind of a hedgerow of shrubs along the property line.
Yeah, it shows it on the plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, would the applicant like to address some of the concerns raised by other speakers?
I'm almost positive that when your person measured the house, they included the actual basement, which is behind all of these new bedrooms. It's a fully enclosed, very little access, very low ceiling basement under the main floor, the second floor. So we call the first floor plan. On all of our drawings, we never call it a basement. The basement is actually the area behind, which is probably about 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, which is where we're getting to 7,000 square feet from your numbers, I think.
But it's non-habitable space and has never been habitable space.
Never been habitable space.
Yeah.
The ceiling is too low for it to be habitable space.
It's nothing but a tall crawl space.
It is a tall crawl space.
Does it
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 is
have
not
a
counted.
floor?
No, it has concrete, kind of broken and stepped.
But I mean, is it used for storage, or is it just like a crawl space that you don't even?
Right now, it's not used for anything, but yeah, it will be used for storage.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be like kind of a hatch door to that. Yes.
It's accessible is what you're saying.
The other thing I just wanted to mention
Must
to
be illegal,
appease
right?
anybody is that these people bought this property to live here for the rest of their lives. They are not doing a development. I'm not a developer's architect. So we have worked very closely to design their dream home, while working with the architectural historian to really respect the prairie style home. So I really value that. The other thing is, I was just talking to the landscape architect about the west property line, and those toyon hedges grow to up to 12 feet high. So that might help, that there'll be a nice green border there.
And what is the tree by the deck? That's the reddish one on the plan? Can you come to the podium so we can record this? They had extra ones. We
This
pilfered.
is a preliminary plan, so I was expecting to put in a small tree in there, something decorative, evergreen, so it's not going to lose its leaves in the winter.
Okay. Would there be concerns if or would you be open to adding more taller vegetation in there, especially because we have concerns from the neighbor, but then also concerns about the lack of windows, and that would partially obscure that.
I was working with the owner on the feng shui portion of it, and he was hesitant to put any more trees in there. In fact, they had specific places where they'd like to see trees, but we can work on that and see if we can work in some more.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be, that would be helpful. I mean, just because I'm close to, but not within the, the distance and I go up that street all the time, and anybody that's lived on that street, and I'm sure the neighbors have indirectly referred to this, is that one day, all of a sudden, all that foliage in the front of the house was gone, and it's sort of, I mean, it almost appears blighted right now. So, I mean, I'm sure the community's glad there's gonna be a project here and there's some plan towards it, but that was kind of a shocking revelation. I'm sure the neighbors felt the same way. So anything you could do to mitigate that, I think would be very helpful.
We will reconsider that whole area.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission discussion. You want to lead us off, Bob?
Sure. So I would like to begin by commending the architect and the applicant for an excellent design. The problem that they were faced with is they have a historical structure and they want to make it useful for the 21st century, and they have created a minimum of increase in bulk and massing, but added usable floor space. They've incorporated pre-existing non-conforming parts. They've stayed true to the historical design, which is difficult to do. We're talking about an addition of only 958 square feet. The non-permitted rooms are coming in. Their 958 square feet is not a huge amount given the size of the lot and the size of the house. I can understand that the neighborhood is nervous about the transition, especially because that house was not in great shape and the lot was not in great shape. I don't know how long it laid without somebody in it for a while, but it seemed like a while. And then there's activity, so I'm sure it got everyone's attention. The design, I think, is fine. The fact that the non-permitted space is now going to be used I think is great, because we're going to recapture that. I do support Mr. Hutt's contribution in that the second garage may want to be reconsidered. I would, it's next to the pool. Having some kind of pool house is fine. I'm okay with it not being a garage. We can give them permission not to do that. And there's parking places for 2 buses down that driveway. It's not as if they're going to be, cars on the street. So I do want to reiterate that that front fence does not do the property any favors. It doesn't go with anything on that property. It diminishes from the appeal of the historical structure. I think the wall in the back corner, I think all your neighbors are going to be, want some relief there. The undergrounding utilities, it's a beautiful house. It's a historical structure. Let's set it off. Let's not have, wires coming in and out of it. I can support this.
And just to clarify, the wall you're talking about on the rear is on the property line, right?
Yeah, if you go behind the existing garage and you go up to the corner, on the east side, you have the chickens coming over, but on the very back, there's like a 6-foot drop into the property of the people behind. And the ground slopes to that back corner. So, if in the event that there's, heavy rains or whatever, there's not a lot keeping the applicant's property on that, inside his lot. So I think at some point in time, it doesn't have to be a huge wall. And if you go to the east, the wall looks like a 5 or 6 foot block wall, and that doesn't do anything. But I guess there will be planting that'll cover that up. But I think there should probably be something that keeps the water flow on the property as opposed to into the neighbor's property. Just thinking.
Okay. Joe?
And I also support the concept that maybe windows inside of the closets or whatever would improve the aesthetic look of the house without interfering with the feng shui design.
I'm very much in support of this project. We've cited a number of different issues. I'm just kind of keeping a rough tally here of things that we might want to consider as conditions. I for one, I'm not going to support all of the compliance, as I said before, with the standards, unless we see a modification of the west elevation so that we have windows, and if they're just in the closet in the bathroom, and even if the bathroom is glass block but the opening is there, that's fine. My rough tally of possible conditions that we might want to ask for here besides the windows are, I don't know if they're going to come back again, whether the neighbor's square footage assessment wants to be reviewed and reported on. That's a possibility. Removal of the front fence, undergrounding utilities, west side plantings, and in the issue that was just discussed about the wall at the rear of the property. And I'm in favor of approving with conditions.
Can I ask a question? Staff has been to the property?
Yes.
And staff helped measure and agreed with and worked on how the numbers came up?
We did. Both the architect and I met in my office a number of times and also through email.
I'm willing to take the staff's word on since they walked the property and looked at the drawings as to what the square footage is in the report.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree with Bob. I think the architect should be complimented. The people who bought the house with the intention of, making this sort of a one-of-a-kind historical home here almost gives them. This is one of the few times I'd say, well, I'd almost allow you a little more square footage. I think she was trying to keep it under the 55, whatever, 40 at what it was, and your idea with the not to suggest that's the requirement, but the one-car garage. I was wondering why they didn't connect it, and then I saw the square footage requirement. Oh, well, we're going to count that space. I would have even allowed them more leeway to connect that and do something with the existing garage. And but having said that, if this is the design they want, I don't have any objections to leaving the existing garage. It sounds like they have plenty of the wherewithal to do any of that. But it's really nice that when I read about the Prairie style art, historical architecture, it's going to be a one of a kind. And the house needs a lot of love, so this sounds like this is what it's going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I concur with my other commissioners. I think this house is really sort of a diamond in the rough. And as people said, I didn't even know it was there because it was so sort of overgrown. And I'm really glad I went and marched around it and looked at the house on a site visit, because I don't think the pictures and the plans really do it justice. I think it's a really cool house, and you really get the feel for the property by walking down the driveway and going to the backyard. And it's a really neat place. And I think one thing to keep in mind with regard to the size is we've talked about how this is a much larger lot than other lots in the neighborhood, but I also think there's a little bit of unfairness in the comparisons, because we take out the multifamily and the institutional, but those are real buildings that are in the neighborhood, and they are much bigger. And so if you look at this in context to all the buildings in the neighborhood, I think it fits in really well. And I think I realize that's the way we do it, but I think you don't want to take those numbers just straight and say, well, it's bigger than the top third or whatever. You've got to use it as a context and information to see if it fits in. And I think this does fit in, especially given that the additions are going to be in the rear. I think that I would have no problem making the findings, but instead of just glossing over them, I do want to make a couple of comments. And one is with regard to finding 8, which is this sort of super technical term, turbo finding, that people need to make when they have a big house. And the specific one I think that's most important is finding 8A. And the really important part is that architecture is responsive to the specific site rather than standard, generic, or cookie cutter. And I think that's what we have here exactly. You have a property that's sloping down. The square footage is added in the back where the slope allows a place to put it so that it's not impacting the neighbors. It's not visible from the front. And whether we want to call it a first story and then a second story or basement or whatnot, I don't think that's important. To me, what's important is how the house works, and this one does work. So I think that's really good. I think one other thing on the findings is that in finding 8B, where applicable, adaptive reuse or other preservation and restoration of the historic structures, it says in the staff report that's not applicable, and that's because we do a more fulsome review of the Secretary of Interior standards. But I don't think, and this is sort of technical, but I don't think that does it the House justice, and I think we should, at least in this finding, say refer to more thorough discussion under the Secretary of Interior standards, because it definitely does meet that finding, and I think that's sort of the whole intent here. I do have a couple of little concerns. One is the west wall, and I think we've talked about that. Addition of the windows on the more northerly section of the wall that aren't the bedroom, I think will help address that, and also some additional trees. And then with regard to the garage, I think that's another instance, just as the angle plane issue that we looked at in our other thing, is where strict adherence to the code leads us astray and makes for a worse project. And so if the applicant wants to keep the garage, that's fine, but I think we should give them the flexibility to reconfigure that to a more useful space, like a pool house or otherwise. And I think we can do that under the non-conforming ordinance, and I think the findings that are necessary there are very easy to be made. So I think the issues that we have now before us is whether the modifications that we are seeking can be addressed by giving conditions and sent to staff, or do we want to see the project reconfigured and brought back to us? And my gut is that we're really close, and we probably don't need to have this come back, and we can just give staff direction and add some conditions as necessary. And if need be, we could even do a subcommittee like we did for one of the one Carter.
Yeah, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think we can ask staff to follow through.
Okay, so let me go over the list of conditions that I've got, and then if I miss any, Joe, you let me know.
Go ahead.
Underground utilities, add rear property line wall.
Underground utilities to the front utility pole.
Underground utility.
Not to the one on the neighbor's side.
Okay.
But the one to the front.
Underground utilities to front utility pole. Add rear property line wall. Remove front fence. Allow reconfiguration of second garage to pool house or other use. Extend permeable pavers in between those two structures, but that's obviously subject to reconfiguration. Add windows to the west elevations in areas other than the bedroom. Add trees or other screening plants to the west, in the west setback. And staff can double check the square footage. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There was just one more concern. I totally.
Okay, you
You need to talk at the mic, so
please
it
come down
becomes
the
a matter of record.
Sorry. Erica Catanese, neighbor. I totally agree with the removal of the black fence, and that'll improve the looks. My concern is that our property is higher in elevation than their property, and that fence keeps me from falling off a wall. So I would hope that a replacement of some other type of wall would be put there, because our driveway drops off maybe.
But that fence is, you're talking about on the side, right?
Yeah, our driveway is above the slope of their property, and so that black fencing keeps us from falling over. And so there would need to be something else replaced there. And so
Okay.
could that be one of the conditions?
Okay,
Well,
I think we're just talking
Depends
about
on whose property the fence is.
I think we're talking about just the front right now.
Yeah, I'm talking about just the front.
Oh,
They'll
I-
work out the side thing.
And
Yeah.
the landscape plan does also show a wood fence extending towards the front of the
Yeah.
property, probably
Okay.
just 42.
So that fence will be contemplated to be replaced with a wood fence.
Okay,
And the front is what we're concerned
yeah.
with coming out.
okay.
'Cause
Yeah,
the look
although-
of the look of the house currently is not improved by that fence.
Right, and it's the continuum of that same fence.
Right.
Depending on where the drop-off is relative to the property line and so forth, I don't want to try to to vet the whole thing right now, but it may be your responsibility to protect that drop-off and not theirs. So I think we have to leave that as an open issue.
Well, I think that's something that, from the design standpoint, I think we have enough, and I'm sure that staff can work that
Staff
out.
will help you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
About the garage, the second garage, do they now have the option of not creating a structure there at all? And I haven't discussed that with them.
Yeah,
but-
I would be fine with that.
So they have an option of either leaving that as a second garage, converting it to a pool house or something, or not having it at all?
Yes, provided that if they do reconfigure it, that staff, and if we have a subcommittee, looks at it and confirms that it's not
Okay.
problematic.
Okay, and then they will just have enough off-street parking to hold.
Between the driveway and the area in front of the existing garage, yeah, they have enough,
Right,
they have plenty of parking.
okay. Wait,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Did I forget any, Joe?
No, we've got it covered. I just want to say that if we're entertaining the idea that staff can just follow through as with conditions, the one that I've been discussing, the addition of the windows, I would say just I'd be fine with staff just following through rather than having them come back. And I'm basing that specifically on the quality of how the other elevations have been redrawn,
Well,
which have been very well
Would
done.
would you like to participate in a subcommittee with Manish? You guys did a great job on that other house.
If need be, but I trust the architect here as long as the marching orders are clear, because the way the other facades have been redrawn is very
And I
well
will
done.
propose that we leave it to staff's discretion, and if they feel like they want a little input, they can avail themselves of the subcommittee, and if they've got it
Yeah.
in hand, then they can just approve it.
I'm fine with that, and just want to be specific that it has to do with the specifics of this job and the way it's presented, and no general rule here, okay?
Right.
All right.
Okay, well, I will entertain a motion with those conditions.
So I would propose that we approve demolition permit 1901 and design review permit 1902 with the stipulated additions and modifications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
You already voted. Congratulations. It's going to be beautiful. Can I just make one comment for the record? Because I disagree. The gentleman that visited the house today or yesterday, and you know, the lower level of the basement, whatever you want to call it, there's a back door. It's a standard 84-inch back door. I went on the listing appointment. It's an 8-foot room. It's not a crawl space. So that is neither here or there, but to call that whole lower level a crawl space, when on the renderings, we can see that it's full size. I just want to put on the record that to consider it a crawl space when you enter a full-size back door. John was an engineer. He worked on antennas, and that was his workshop for 40 years. There were full-size machines, racks with tools. I mean, it's not a crawl space, and that's. I know it's going to be beautiful. Congratulations, but
Okay, well, I appreciate your input. One of the
he's gonna
things
love
that.
my chickens.
One of the
He'll love
things
my
that,
chickens.
well, he might have some of his own. One of the things that we asked is that staff to double check that, so if you want to
Well,
talk to staff and coordinate, I think
I heard
that's
everybody
great.
characterize it right now as a crawl space.
It's actually, just for staff clarification, it is a full second level, or the lower level.
I
of a
thought I heard it was
two-story house.
characterized as a crawl space.
Okay, well,
I did.
Okay.
That's it. You gained your motion. Congratulations. It's going to be beautiful.
Which direction is the door that you're referring to facing in?
Well, there's two, and it's facing south, and it's in the southeast corner. And you walk in, and it's that 1,300 square foot room, and it was John's
we can let it
workshop.
go. Okay,
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. we're gonna move on from our public hearings then. And we are going to move to,
Public comment.
planning, we don't have a community input. I don't think anybody wants to talk anyhow. We're gonna move on to planning commission reports. Do any commissioners have anything to report?
I have nothing.
Okay, I will report that the Commercial Code Subcommittee met with members of the Planning Commission and City Council, and it was a very productive meeting. I think that the basic gist of it was that the commercial code revisions that we had previously recommended are heading in the right direction, and with a few tweaks can be reused. But also the direction is that we need to go further and deal with parking, because our parking code is inhibiting of the reuse and new construction of uses in downtown, especially restaurants that might come into downtown. So we'll hear from staff on timing, but at some point in the near future, that's going to come back to us as a discussion item.
Okay.
And then we can probably send it off to the subcommittee that did the initial code drafting and can revise the commercial code with the little tweaks and then attack the parking code.
Did you get a sense during these discussions of whether the desire was to create a specific plan for improved parking, or was it just to modify the zoning rules as they are?
I think it's more along the lines of modifying the zoning code. With regard to some of the issues of configuration of city parking or parking on city areas, that's something that the city's gonna look at more down the road. And there was some discussion of ability to do more angle parking up on North on Baldwin that might be able to provide more parking, and also the big parking lot on Mariposa to make that more inviting for people to park in, and better wayfinding signs and whatnot.
So where does that comes back to?
So, yeah,
us
it's
now?
gonna come back to us to have a full planning commission discussion about how we want to revise the parking code and, along with the commercial code, and then recommend that up to the city council.
So, yes, we're currently trying to schedule our second subcommittee meeting with the Subcommittee of Planning and the City Council. So we're hoping to meet again in September, provided people's availability.
I thought we had shaken that one out pretty hard, hadn't we? In terms of saying, in terms of getting a sense of what the limits were on how much you could change the rules without it imploding.
Are you speaking with regard to the parking, or?
Yeah, we had discussion. I don't remember exactly where that
But
ended up.
we didn't pass any resolutions, so we did discuss it as being a problem, but now it's gone to the city council and.
Without a resolution.
We're going to, and we're gonna get their input, and then we're going to
It's
come
gotta
back
go
and
around again.
propose a
Okay.
change.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The only thing I wanted to mention was, we are, and as we discussed before, the August 15th meeting will be canceled, and we don't have any items agendized for that date as well. We do have two items for September, or one item for September 5th, and then two items on September 19th, which are CETT projects.
I think it would be good if we could schedule the parking discussion at the planning commission level on the September 5th meeting, because my take from our subcommittee meetings that we wanted to have that planning commission level discussion before we have another subcommittee, so we can report back on that.
Right, and I also actually wanted to meet with you specifically and Commissioner Dennison even before we do that. I was going to reach out to you to find out your availability to do that.
Okay.
But we certainly could include that in the agenda item.
And if we've got, you said we have two of the latter meeting, right? So it would fit in the earlier meeting better.
Yes.
Okay, that would be great.
That concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, well then as we've been told, we are going to miss our second meeting in August, so I will adjourn the planning commission until September 5th.